would at 7:01 in the evening. I want to welcome everybody to the December 9th, 2020 Ways and Means Committee meeting. That's basically the call to order. Could we have a motion to approve the October 28th, 2020 minutes, please?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Joe. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay,
Who was the second?
I'll second.
Oh, thank you.
Let me know I can speak. I don't think I'm gonna be able to get video tonight.
Okay.
I'll have the speaker.
Okay, we'll settle for that. All those in favor? Say aye.
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 Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Thank you very much.
Looks like we have everybody.
Yes, we do
Joe's
now.
on, Mike. Okay, cool.
Yeah, everybody is present. So with that, I will preface the meeting. I hope that we can keep it briefer than what we usually do. I suspect everybody has plenty to do. And I'm not anticipating any major changes. I hope that's what Ed's going to tell me. Ed, I did mean to email you to kind of get a preview, but the last few days have just been a little busy. Anyway, so could we have Ed and Ken a brief update? I'm assuming it will be brief as far as 2020 actuals and any projections that it might have changed.
Ken, do you want to speak on that?
Sure. I ran a report on income statement as of 11:30. And to that date, we've received $3.273 million in earned income tax versus 3.311 back in 19. So we're down about $37,800 comparative. So if you figure in the 1.75 growth, we're down 3% so far this year.
Yeah, I think we should point out that it's $1.2 million under budget, and so the story isn't going to get fully told until the fifth quarter receipts come in, which are the January, February receipts. This is a
That is correct. The fourth quarter. Yep.
Yes,
Important.
but there has been a slight gain, and I mean that's just, you know, I
we
think
don't see any reason to change our forecast at this point.
I wasn't anticipating that, but at least there's not any bad news. It's going the other way.
Yes.
Of course, building permits have been very strong. Sinclair indicated at our last staff meeting that the building permits for 2020 are going to eclipse 2019. They've been incredibly busy. That line item's up $253,000 compared to last year, year to date. So looking basically overall, let's see, to date, I mean 11:30, we've received $7.9 million in revenue versus $7.849 last year. So we're basically running neck and neck comparative, this year to last year as far as revenues are concerned. The expenses are, as of 11:30, at $7.7 million versus $8.1 million last year. So there's a positive variance of about $350,300 there. So, as far as 2020 is concerned, we're holding our own due to the strong permits, and the EIT has been relatively stable. The only thing that is down considerably from year to date is the transfer taxes. We're down about $150,000 on that line item. But, like I said, time and time again, Ed and I are continuing to monitor it, and, we'll report any, variances that would compromise the township's financial position.
I think the color commentary on the expense side is that Ken is reading you figures from the general fund,
Yep.
So you see two effects there. You see the fact that the capital got slowed down considerably, and so there's no transfers out of the general fund that normally would have been in there. And number two, the stop on hiring that we put in place back in March really bit. And so the police department in particular did not fill open positions until just this week. The first one was filled. So, and they're not the only ones. So when you look at the dollars, the salary dollars also are a big contributor to us being better than expense for the year.
And we did move about $100,000, out of the general fund and into state liquid fuels for public works wages. So that was a benefit to, a relief to the general fund during the major months of the pandemic.
Yeah, but not to the forecaster, because some of it was salaries.
Right.
Very hard to keep track of. Anyway, yes.
So
Okay,
that's all I have for right now.
Ed, any other commentary?
No.
Okay, anybody else questions? Then
Nope.
moving, whoops. I'm sorry. Okay,
Well, I had a quick question. Of the $300,000 improvement in the expenses, how much of it is any of that capital or something that's be pushed to next year? Or how much of it is true savings?
No, Mike, I can't really tell you that because I'm reading figures strictly from the general fund right now.
Okay,
But I can tell you that at least half of it is in salaries. So that's real savings.
okay,
Mhm.
got it.
and thanks for that, because I kind of had the same question. Oftentimes capital gets kicked to the next year, and we've talked about that. So it's just a deferral. It's not really a savings. Then the other question, and I don't know that I put it on the agendas maybe as well as I should have. We're going to go, I would like to go quickly through the presentation just so that everyone here on Ways and Means, and I did send it out if we could move through it. But are there any major changes being proposed between the preliminary budget and the budget that they're expected to vote on December the 15th?
No,
No,
no major and no minor changes.
Okay. And could I put you on the spot, Jen? You think everything's good from the supervisor's point of view?
Yeah, there's no reason to think they'll change. I think
Okay.
it's,
I didn't think so either. I just thought I would ask the person who would, most likely know.
So that means the pension as presented by PAC is in.
yes, Joe.
that's correct.
That's what I
You're
understand.
not
All right.
smiling, smile.
Okay. I was kind of thinking maybe we'd get there, Joe. And Colleen's smiling too. Bob, I can't see his face. So
I'll be busy taking minutes.
I know. Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Okay. Enough
I
about-
started this personally in 2018. So I've had a lot of
Okay.
time invested in it. So,
And you're
and
seeing the fruits
so
of your
have
labor.
so have a lot of other people.
Yes,
So,
it's good. It's
so thank you, board.
Thank-
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you for all your hard work.
and
Just a sidelight, I did receive notification from the actuary that they're going to be starting the Act 205 report. And, we just have to notify them that we want to go from 7 3/4 down to 7 1/4 as far as, the 21 Act 205 report. And don't forget that that movement will take effect in 22. So in 21, we'll be paying the MMOs plus $160,000 in extra payments.
good.
And to tamper the celebration down just a little bit, just to let you know that this is for this year. That's the only thing that's promised is this year.
That's
So
all we, yep.
And we all realize, I mean, the budget approval is for the current year, and that's true for everything. It's not just true for it's pretty much true for everything. Anyway, Oh,
One
good
for
evening.
zero-based budgeting, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just want to thank Nancy. She just popped in. So thank you. So I don't know, Stephanie, you ran through the presentation at the board meeting. I don't know if you or Ed said it to me. I'm not exactly sure who owns it. If we could just, again, for the group, and we'll stop and take questions if there are any on the various pages. Some of it, I don't know that we need to go into that much, but I found the ones with the millage rate in front of them that you had at the meeting versus what was included with what went out to be informative. And I had some questions over that. So if you don't mind going through that as quick as what you did at the Board of Supervisors meeting.
Yeah, I mean, we always remind, and more for the public, the schedule and how many meetings were held by the board throughout the year. I think that's important for the public, especially who are watching. We shared the 2020 forecast, and everybody's gotten this, I think. We always do a summary of what that looks like in terms of all the millages and the different funds and the revenues and expenditures and what the fund balances are. And then we went into what was being proposed for 21 for the preliminary budget, sharing operating revenues, expenses, net income, net operating income, the capitals, including grant revenues that might come in capital spending. And again, then we provide the board with that list of all the various funds that we have, the revenues, expenses, any reserves that we're going to be utilizing, and of course our fund balances. And I guess the real estate tax plan, we provide that to them with the various funds, and it shows the increases or decreases, or if we're moving, kind of shifting millage a little bit, or kind of thing. So we show that going from that 13.125 to the 13.875, and that's that 3/4 of a mil increase. And then of course, Ed and Ken put together these great pie charts. I know they're hard to see on the screen, but they're in the book, they're on the website. If you take time and go through, the whole book is there. And broken down by where all the revenues come from, where the expenses are by department, and then our favorite little bar chart that we put up, which is what 1 mil equates to, what the average residential assessment is, and compared township, county, and school district. Obviously those millage rates and the township and where we're at is still the smallest, in my opinion, sort of, you get the biggest bang for your buck in a sense, depending on where you are in life. And it's the really small amount for fire, police, ambulance, roads, zoning, everything. So parks, you get everything. And then just the conclusions, and of course we always ask the board to hang the budget, what that means, and
Yeah.
Looking forward to adoption on the 15th. Quick
So
enough?
no, that was great. But one of the things I've forgotten about apparently for the township, when I look at the chart that has the millage rates, and then it goes through the various funds, general fund down through the roads and bridges. There's a revenue piece, certainly understand that. But then it's called used reserve. I mean, we've got the revenue, expenses, fund balance. But the used reserve column, can you help me remember, and maybe the whole crew, I don't know, or maybe somebody on Ways and Means can help me. What does that column stand for?
Difference.
Go ahead, Ed. You're going to do the best on it.
I don't think it's anything more complicated than start with the fund balance. You identify the revenues, expenses. You know what the fund balance is at the end. The difference had to come from reserves.
Yeah.
It's nothing. There's nothing magic about it.
Well, what are when you say reserves, what do you mean by reserves?
Hang on a second. Let me get to that chart.
For example, let's just use one that doesn't have huge numbers. Let's just use Fund 21, the Offsite Improvement Fund, which we've had conversation about. There was $18,000 worth of revenue, $40,000 of used reserve, and then $58,000 of expenses.
So that would imply to me that means that the Fund 21 fund balance probably went down 40 grand year to year.
Yeah, it's just using up the fund balance. It's saying
Yeah.
that,
It's just,
Yeah.
it's a difference. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's just a different column putting in
Yeah.
there for that.
It's
It's a-
easier.
it's
Have
the
the-
loss number, right?
Yeah,
You have to balance the budget, okay?
Of course.
Yeah.
So if you're going to have, expenses over, revenues, you're gonna have to dip into your reserves to balance that.
In
budget.
other words, it's fund balance utilization. That would be the terminology that I would
Yeah,
use. for it.
yeah. it's,
so look at your example up on the fire fund. It says there on that one that we actually grew that balance by a little bit during 21 by $7,228.
Well,
That's all it means.
okay. So, but again, going down through some of these, I've just found that the changes that went into the used or the use of fund balance to be interesting.
I'd like to at least explain that the only reason that chart and the other one are in this book is because that's what's historically always been there. And it is not a chart that we spend any time on other than to put the numbers in the columns and calculate the difference.
And
So
to take it,
if there's
and to
anything
take
you
it
want to
further,
discuss about it, I would urge you not to discuss it on this chart, but let's go where the data is.
Yeah, and that was kind of what I was thinking about too. I may be the only one that has any questions about the presentation like this and some of the funds that jumped out at me. Again, the offsite and the debt service at first did, but what you explain, thank you. Now, for the revenue, that was pretty straightforward, although I always like to see totals on pages. So what does the total revenue, which of the amounts, which total is the revenue pie chart?
Which total
What
is,
does the revenue pie chart total as far as millions? Is that on there?
no, it's not on there. But it comes right off of the interior sheets. So it's whatever the total is in the detail.
Okay, I just kind of used.
This is basically a couple of categories off of the Ways and Means revenue sheet. And I think there must be an all other on here somewhere. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, that's probably over in the interest, donations and miscellaneous. But so we take a couple of the categories and bring them out. But this ties completely to the revenue sheet. So if you went to section 1 of the budget book and you looked at revenue, you would find it, and you added all these numbers up, you'd find it equal to total.
Yes, I'm sure of that because typically pie charts come from something, from a spreadsheet, but I was just, it would have been helpful, I thought, for the public if it had a total number on it. That's the main thing.
I'll
Look
remember that. I'll remember that for next year.
Or I'll help you remember it.
Do not,
But the department, the expenses by department. One of the things I would think has been more useful, and I brought it up a couple of times, would be equally useful, would be a categorization by salaries, not by so much by department, but I'll call it function. In school district, it's called objects, such as salaries. Your benefits is on here. Services, that sort of thing. Since you don't prepare one that way, I don't think that information is categorized by, there's no place you roll up all the salaries and
actually,
represent that.
yes, if you go into section 1 of the budget book and you look at the summary expense, you will find that the salaries are there.
Understood.
The
And
very top item on that sheet is salaries.
so we could
Second item is
categorize all of the salaries and come off of that, and then I can make my own pie chart so to speak.
Right, or you can remind me next year and we'll see if we can do something like that.
Would anyone else find that to be helpful, or is the department's adequate for what people are interested in on Ways and Means?
Oh, I think if you're looking to control expenses, you got to know what type they are. And
Right.
it should be summarized that way.
Okay.
My remarks to that would be anybody who's trying to control the expenses or understand the revenue by looking at pie charts isn't looking in the right place. Go into section 1s and section 2 and look at the data. And for example, you will find out in section 1 what percentage of the total spending salaries are. All that's in there. I don't have much time for these pie charts. I think they're pretty. I think they give you a flavor for what's bigger than something else. But in terms of analyzing things and understanding differences, I don't think they're very helpful.
I usually find that that's the first look when somebody starts analyzing. They go to the pie chart, then they go to the detail to see where they want to go.
Yeah.
That's how I use them.
I don't disagree with you.
I agree with that. That's the right approach.
Okay.
But I think that it's important to have pie charts that have at least some of the, some key information. And if you want to control the expenses, it's not really so much by department, particularly. It's trying to look at the categorizations. So yes, I know I can go in and look at the summary or, of the salaries and pull all of that up. And the way that fringes are allocated at the township, that's very easy to do because they're all rolled together. But even that might be interesting to look at how much of the fringes, what is pension, what is benefits, what is, what constitutes, and you can start dividing each one of those.
And
And
all of that's in section 4 on the fringes page.
Okay.
It's all there.
I know it's all there, and I was just talking about, diagramming it and for the public. I don't, and it sounds like we can make some steps forward in looking at that for next year. Certainly, I know you and Ken know where everything is, but I also know sometimes that for Board of Supervisors, it's helpful to have the top side, have a graphic. And if you don't like pie charts, bar charts are sometimes much better to do the comparisons. Before any questions, does anyone have any comments over the summary or anything at the point, or we beat the 2021 budget as much as we need to?
One comment I'd make is sometimes because we're not that close to the detail, we don't know where to look or where to ask. And that's specific to your question. What are medical benefits for the police department? What are medical departments benefits for Parks and Rec, et cetera, et cetera. Unless you're given the data or you're very familiar with it, you don't know where to look.
And I think that's, I'm kind of jumping ahead to goals for next year. That may be one of the areas that a subcommittee of us might want to start looking at is the salary and the benefit pieces, because I certainly worked with this for a long time, but I would like to get into figuring out of the total amount of benefits, which is what, fringes of 18% of the budget or 3.3 million, what does go to pension, what is healthcare, and as Joe said, we may start wanting to parse it out by group or whatever.
We're
then
actually
certainly
working on that as we speak. So that's, yes.
I'm sorry.
We're working on that as we speak.
Oh, good.
And then I would just like
well-
to say thank you. I'm new to the whole budgeting piece and I'm a visual person, so I'm a chart girl and I look at that first and then dig in. I don't know what's always in the background. There are other pieces that are happening that the supervisors have asked Stephanie and Ed to do. So we're starting to look at some of that things too. So by the time things come around, make more sense. Historically, and Jen could probably jump in, or Stephanie, government runs things a little bit differently. The way the state has run, their pensions and benefits has been different. So if you're looking with a corporate mind, it's not going to look the way you would think it might look or anyone would look. So, we have to be mindful of, we're obviously going to be open to our constituents, but we have to be mindful that people may not understand it's really a different animal too. So that would probably be the only thing I would heed and be careful with moving forward until we sort of wrap our minds around it. But we've been talking with Stephanie. I know I've asked, I'm a former HR person, so I've asked as well to understand those pieces. Because like for me, when I look at Park and Recs, for instance, it all gets sort of blended into one fund, and I like to see it all parsed out as well. So I understand, like, I want to be able to see what's it cost to, I've asked what's it cost to do 1 millage of road, which I now know, or what's it cost if we add someone to our staff? What's the total cost in addition to salary? Those
Yeah,
types of
what's the benefit?
just a general percentage so that people have an understanding. Those are the things. It's not a judgment. It's just to help make good choices moving forward. And what happened before, maybe not a good fit now, or maybe a great fit and we're way ahead of everybody else.
Well,
So it makes sense to look at it. That's all.
And then that's also the next point is once you have that information benchmarking against, comparable entities, whether it's townships, school districts, corporations, or, whatever.
Brenda,
It also helps when you're trying to do a program. And I know when I'm going back in history with Ken Snyder, but he would look at a program and say, what does it cost? And typically what the response back was, well, we had X, Y, and Z people, they spent so many hours, here's their hourly rate, that's what the cost was. Well, that's not really the cost,
No.
it's that plus an overhead application. And that's something that with my many years of accounting, especially doing break evens and doing cost accounting, doing overhead rates are, piece of cake. Give me a napkin, I'll do one for you. So I can help in that respect.
Be careful what you
Brenda?
volunteer for, Joe.
Hey,
I volunteered for PAC. I've already have an overhead analysis done on my computer. So it'll take me about a half hour to update it and get it off to you if you want to see it.
Hey, Brenda.
yes, Ken?
Amen.
This presentation is basically for like summary level.
Yeah.
Because I went out to the Central Bucks School District's website for their budget, and their budget is on their website is 15 pages long. It's all summary. I went out to the county's website. They got a $434 million budget there, and that was basically all summarized. There's not much detail there. I just came out of a 3-hour GFO webinar for budget presentation. And these are some of the things that we're going to be making a change for 22. Point well taken as far as some of these charts and, informational pages. We could put, a summary in there as far as talking about the pie chart or the other pages that are concerned. So this is something that, that Ed and I have been working on for 2 and 3 years, and it's a budget that's in the process.
Well, and I've been around on the Ways and Means Committee longer than what you have, and I've always been buried in the detail. That tends to be what my comfort level is trying to get into the detail professionally. But this year, I watched the budget portion. I mean, one of the great things about live streaming or video is that you can pick and choose. I did not watch the entire Board of Supervisors meeting. I, honed in on the budget. I know you're shocked, Jen, I can tell.
Me too.
And anyway, it was just, how can we make this a little bit better? Because there's always people out in the audience that like that. And believe me, I've stood up like Ed and thought, who really cares about this stuff? But after being, hearing it for almost 30 years, I think that some of the points, and there are people in the township, in the audience that have the experiences Joe does, of and Nancy's mentioned it, of private sector. So having the information and saying we've got a 23% benefit load or 18% or whatever it is also really helpful to have conversations. And it'll go over a lot of people's heads, but a lot of folks, will understand it. So thanks. I'm glad to hear that there's, thought of that. I don't need to belabor these points. Does anyone else have any, anything that they noticed looking at the summary sheets?
Yeah. Brenda, but I think, I do have some suggestions I think we'll talk about in January. Like in the narrative, the second page talks about 0.27 million, 0.35 million. That's a hard number to decipher. Maybe not for somebody who works with numbers every day, but if you're doing a document for the general public, 0.05 million is a hard number to come up
Figure
with.
out.
Yeah. So I think things like that, if we look at this document, we can make some changes that make it more user friendly.
I agree with you, but as the writer of that, I would say to you that I voted in favor of doing that as opposed to mixing dollars million and dollars K sprinkled in different places throughout the write-up. I went for consistency.
I would agree with that, except on page 1, you talk about 61K. You talk about 131K. Page 2, you talk about $1 million.
I missed them.
So it is inconsistent.
Yes, I missed them. Thank you.
Anything else on this particular, before we move on to, we will be coming back to this. Well, maybe we'll go ahead. We'll talk about planning for 2021, which of course is kind of planning and looking at 2022. And Joe's already offered to be involved in a subcommittee, apparently, if we go that way. But what does the group think we should focus on for 2022 or look at in 2021 to roll into 2022 budget? Certainly, I'm not expecting any major changes regarding the timeline. That type of piece is already in there, but looking at the summary, but then also what areas. Again, one of the things that I could always say when I stood up and talked about budget was what percentage of the budget was salary and benefits. I look at that, usually it was about 70%, creeping up to 75%. Now this year, that's not true because of all the money that's going into capital. What is it, 28% is being, put it on the pie chart as capital. But I think that there's some appetite in getting involved and analyzing salary and benefits. Not individuals. I don't think anybody on the committee or in the group is thinking about that, but just getting in and understanding salary, what the positions pay and all of that. From the committee.
Brenda, if I could jump in for a minute. The Board of Supervisors, because this was something Ways and Means had suggested a year or two ago, and it wasn't something that they were willing to do at that point in time. But I always meet with the board and talk to them about goals I'd like to address. And one of the things I brought to them this year, and they agreed to set some money aside in the budget, and we'll be coming in January with some proposals to hire a consultant that will do a job classification and compensation and benefit analysis for the township. And they'll run a benchmark of, similar municipalities and things like that. They'll interview individual employees and find out about, Nancy has found out and Jen knows, we wear multiple hats. My title is not just manager, but it's also the secretary, treasurer, and the zoning officer. Other places, we have a fire marshal and a facilities manager, and so people have always worn multiple hats doing multiple jobs, especially in the non-uniform side of things. And this is just for the non-uniform side. So that is something that we do have in the budget for 2021.
2021.
I think that's
Yep.
fantastic, but I'm also interested in looking at what the actuals are right now. And Stephanie, I think all of us that work in government are used to having people wear multiple hats. And that sometimes is what makes it so difficult to have comparison and comparability from township to township, is those multiple hats don't always look the same from location to location. So I applaud looking at that and analyzing consultants versus employees and uniform versus non-uniform. But I also would like to get in and understand a little bit more about where the dollars are in that and how that goes, and not just the salaries, which is usually pretty straightforward. It's FTEs times hourly rate, overtime, and some other components. But the benefits are, again, going back to that pie chart where I did a springboard there of how much 3.3 million. Well, how does that break up? Or how is that delineated? It might be a little more professional. Rest of the group, do you see these things as kind of two different activities?
Yeah, I think it's a good activity, Brenda, but the other thing I'd like to have us take a look at again, or not again, but keep an eye on is debt service, because that's probably the third largest component. We do have debt on the township building. We're looking at other debt. We have capital leases. We have a short-term note, and interest rates are constantly changing. So I think we have to keep an eye on that.
I also think that the first tranche that was borrowed a few years ago, aren't we getting close to being able to do an advance refunding on that?
Getting close, yeah.
So that may
22.
be,
22 is the call date.
Yeah,
thank you,
22.
Ken. 22?
Yeah.
When in 22?
I believe in the springtime. That's
Okay.
the last time I talked to Jamie was in the springtime of 22.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So those areas. And one of the other, well, before we leave that, and I made a note 2 or 3 times, has there been a surveillance rating from either Moody's or Standard & Poor's of the township recently?
Ken, I don't
No, I haven't received anything, Brenda.
know.
Really?
Nope.
Okay, because maybe they're not doing them as frequently because of COVID, or they've got other things.
Possibly so. We're under compliance as far as, because we're submitting
Yeah,
our
and that's-
financial statements.
And that's one piece of it, but I mean, they just usually review on an annual basis and talk about changes that have happened, and COVID was one of the pieces on some of the reviews that's been noted. But no contact and nothing, huh? Okay.
Nope.
Well,
Nope,
Mm-mm.
nothing.
I would always be interested to know when those come out. I haven't, I mean, I can also go out and look for them, and I haven't done that. It's easier to ask you. Thank you.
Sure.
So we heard what Bob said about debt. Joe, salary benefits, Colleen, Eric, Joe.
Community center.
Well,
Yeah,
we're
I
gonna,
was, when I think about the budget, I always try to think from a resident's perspective as well, and what we can be doing to improve lives of our residents. Not just how we're spending the money, but what we can do with the money and spend it in ways to help others, which definitely the roads is probably the top priority in this entire township, not just my neighborhood. But it's something silly like when I emailed Jen because I was out doing leaves and like, can't we build out a way twice a year to, do a leaf collection? And how do we research that and provide that service? So different services that we don't provide, and it probably sounds trivial, but I do think we need to talk a little more about that or have that on agenda, from time to time in ways and means that we can talk about different ways to benefit the lives of our residents, not just manage the budget or as part of managing the budget, if that makes sense.
I mean, back in the day, Colleen, it was, the EAC who did analysis on recycling,
Yeah.
and being, curbside recycling to the township.
Mhm.
and things like that. And, you know, a lot of the other committees that kind of roll up their sleeves like EAC and what they've done in the parks with the native plant garden years ago with, you know, tire recycling day, you know, shred events, the program that we run where you can bring your yard waste to the township, and then the program that your haulers, but a lot of people have more leaves than what the haulers can even pick up.
Right.
You know, I know the borough does a program, and I know a lot of the smaller boroughs and places that don't have the larger properties, you know, do those leaf pickup. They do their own trash pickup, things like that.
So Stephanie, when it comes to that, not to completely go off the rails, but when it comes to doing something like a leaf pickup or one of these other projects that we're looking at, as far as ways and means and how they as a group should deal with this, like for me, I imagine that that would be more of something that either the public would bring to the board or to the township, and then have ways and means determine how if we can afford it and how we would pay for it.
Right.
What would be the next step in that case? I would think either get a petition that shows interest from the residents, or
I mean, that's one way. I mean, certainly things can kind of take two paths. One, someone shows up at a board meeting and they make a suggestion and it gets, you know, provided to one of the boards and committees to help develop, or it's, you know, developed organically and comes up from one of the committees to the board of supervisors. And I think before it, you know, like you said, goes too far off the rails or somebody spends too much time on a topic, you know, at the, you know, presentation, the annual meetings, presentations to the board and stuff, that's a good time to bring those topic up and share and say, hey, we're working on this. And, you know, I think if the board is of an opinion that, whoa, put the brakes on that, or, oh, that's great, keep going. I think that feedback has always been provided.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I would prefer, instead of waiting for the community to come and then the Ways and Means evaluate it, that we be proactive. I
Proactive.
mean,
Mhm.
we're talking about the condition of our roads, but if you take a look at how many trash trucks go down your road from different companies, where if you went out with a township bid for one company 1 or 2 days a week, you would eliminate a lot of that traffic.
Well, Bob, we've been down that road before.
Three times. No offense.
You can go down
I've
again.
lived, I'm, you know, been there, done that, and happy to do it again. I will say though, when the residents showed up, a lot of residents showed up, very much opposed to it, and they brought their trash cans with them, and they said, these are my trash cans and no one else will touch them except who I decide. I thought that was fascinating. I really did.
But I think if you just take a look at it as the basic service, where if you're looking at it as a leaf collection or a more frequent leaf collection where you're adding additional services, may have some merit.
So
I mean, believe me, I would love it, because there are times, you know, I totally agree with you about the number of trash trucks on the road, the hours of operation, the complaints about, you name it. And I
Picking
mean,
up too early.
we have contract trash haul, or, you know, contract trash hauling. You know, it's easier to manage, I have to say, you know, you're controlling it. I'm making one phone call. You know, if Colleen calls and says there was a problem, I have one person to call. And then it's like, because 9 times out of 10, you might be using Whitetail, someone else is using Republic, someone else is using Waste Management. Was it Tenari? Who was it? And, you know, it's like, it's contracted trash hauling. Call your contractor.
Mhm.
Tell your neighbor. No, they're still calling me.
Right.
And I have no, you know, clout to do anything.
So as far as the purview of Ways and Means goes with it, if you think that it would help the township financially, I think it would be perfect for the group to be looking at. One of the groups that, if you did feel like it would help that way, one of the groups I would suggest reaching out to and teaming up with is the EAC, because there is such a huge environmental factor when it comes to having multiple trash trucks on the roads. And I'm sure the staff, I'm sure Stephanie would be happy to give you more history on on the problems with it. And maybe if we know more of what people's concerns are, we can kind of, kind of predict what we should be responding to.
Yeah.
One thing, my daughter lives in Chalfont Borough. They have one trash hauler. Her rates are probably 20% less than what I'm currently paying as a senior citizen with one pickup day.
Right.
So there is some financial benefit overall to everyone if we had one collector, because then you're out bidding the entire township and
With
low man
economies
bid.
of scale.
So,
Right.
in
Well, I
fact,
think all of us realized because of the road implications and I'm,
that's a second benefit. And a third, and what I find myself doing is when I get an increase, they give it some ambiguous name, and then I go, yeah, but so-and-so will offer me blah, 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 and they match it. So you're always playing, the game.
I think
Okay.
that's interesting, Joe, because when Rick Colello was on the board, I know I had conversations with him about this, and he said that the complete opposite. He said that senior citizens would get the short end of the stick if we had a single hauler. He felt like they would end up paying more. So that's interesting.
No.
my,
I pay less than my neighbor for the same haul.
you just
because of
have
the
to
seat.
stay on them. Once a year, you have to call in and they'll lower it for a year and you can tell, anyway.
Well, if they raise it, I typically call. It's not me. Usually, it's my wife. And Carol will call and we get the adjustment.
Well, I didn't mean for this to go.
Thank
down
you.
a path. I did,
Great topic.
the reason I brought it up is because if we're talking about, thinking about budget going forward, Bob hit the nail on the head where I would like us to be a bit more proactive in actually providing services to residents as opposed to just talking about benefits of our employees and salaries
have
of
them.
our employees and tax revenue, right?
Colleen,
I would like to
100%
see that happen more within our committee.
Yeah.
So
Colleen,
I,
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
no, go ahead, I'm done.
I think you're 100% spot on. I think telling a great story and showing we're being proactive. I mean, heck, maybe they can help. I'm seeing people in my own neighborhood paying people to fix their curbs because they're getting destroyed from the trash trucks.
Yeah.
I know, I've been here 25 years. I know the township used to pick up leaves because I remember there used to be a leaf pickup, Stephanie.
That special that was the EAC. They did a special thing with I think it was Top Hat Landscaping, and they did pick up leaves. That was a special program. You had to sign up for it and everything. And they partnered and a Boy Scout was involved, but it was run through the EAC, and it was a long time ago.
But I mean, I pay now to have someone pick up my leaves. I'm embarrassed to say, but it's just too much. But it is an expense that people are taking on. And if they're looking at salaries, I'm with Colleen. I think showing services and being proactive. I don't know what other townships do. It's sometimes not expensive. It's more those feel good things like you're suggesting that give people a sense that we're watching the budget for them. I think that's really, I think Colleen's spot on with that. And there may be other.
I would just warn against, when it came to like the bathrooms at Kids Castle, it seemed like that was kind of like a third rail when it came to in front of the board. And so I want you guys just to be cautious that you at least partner up with maybe another committee.
Exactly.
That way we won't see it get put aside as quickly.
I think actually that had everything to do with what it was and
Yeah.
stuff that was going on in Park and Rec and really didn't have anything long-term effects. But that's my personal opinion.
Okay.
And I
Yeah,
sat
but I
on
think-
Park and Rec and asked for bathrooms year after year, and there was a majority of Park and Rec people that were pushing for that.
Mhm.
There
Yeah.
was a change, and all of a sudden they got their back up because we found the money to do the project and wanted to move ahead.
And that's
Which
just because we know
brings-
the finances better and also the membership of this committee. And I'm sorry, Bob, we've been around a lot longer than most people on Park and Rec now, other than administration. So
Well, I
But
certainly, I
would
certainly,
agree with Jen, because I do think, like my idea just about leaves, EAC, I think would be integral, because we have to figure out how to pay for that service with our revenues, but I think we could probably, turn around and sell mulch back to residents based off of the leaves, and EAC, I think would be an integral part of figuring out a way to turn those, leaves into mulch, that type of thing. I'm always looking to collaborate, so I'll reach out to, I don't even know who's the head of EAC, but I'll
Janine.
do this
Janine.
at least this
Mitchell.
fall and run with it, but
Isn't it? Yeah.
But one thing before we leave this, I think of a place I worked for over 10 and a half years, Upper Dublin,
yeah,
did all of that themselves. They do their own trash. They actually mulch a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Mulch is free. It's
Yep.
located in a couple of spots.
Yep.
So we could even,
that's,
We have-
much as Paul Leonard and I used to butt heads, I would be delighted to talk with him.
yeah, Thank
And I
you.
was gonna say, I know through TAB and through several of my committees like Bike and Hike and Dog, they're looking for ways to promote and get themselves out there.
Mhm.
Dan will tell you, like the sewer authority, like, some of the things they're not allowed to talk about. So if there's ways to show they're being proactive and Ways and Means can say, hey, we noticed this. Would you be interested? We can tell you about it. You'd have to lead it, but we can tell
Right.
you about it. Then you really become an incredible resource to those committees, and which I think would be awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
collaboration is always good.
Okay, Joe?
Yeah, that one thing too, the bathrooms, which Bob alluded to and whatever. The genesis of that, okay, was not started by Ways and Means, okay? It was started by a request by Stephanie when we were talking about most groups, committees suggest things for the budget.
Mhm.
What does Ways and Means consider something, would they consider something for the budget? So we sat down and thought and said, well, we need bathrooms. And we came up with that. And in all honesty, the Parks and Rec kind of thought we were treading on their turf and got bent out of shape because we were asked by Stephanie to request something. It's not like we just said, we're going to step on somebody's toes. We want bathrooms. It was.
Joe, I don't want to like take the meeting down this road too much, just because,
Okay.
yeah, but I did want to say, and Stephanie can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of that situation was she was asked what to do if you wanted to do something, and she said you put in a CapEx form and was directing you on how to get that done, not necessarily advocating that you do something like that. So that was my understanding from that conversation. It's fine. I mean, I think,
It's
Right,
water
not-
under
not-
the
not
bridge.
it's
said,
water under the
done.
bridge. It's water
Done.
under the bridge,
Enough
but I
said.
just want to
That's
say
not my
that,
opinion. Enough said.
Okay.
Good night.
okay. So, but moving on to another topic about what to look for next year, I just wanted to bring up a couple things that were on the top of my head as far as what Ways and Means could be doing. And one of the things that hits me every single budget is looking at that general fund plummeting in those charts every year. And I know Ed's told us a million times that it always looks bad, but then when the year comes, it's never as bad as it looks. So whatever you guys can do as far as, from what I understand, our numbers are getting closer. Our estimates are a little more realistic. So watching it plummet even makes me even more concerned about the long term. So I know Ed and Ken are working on budgeting and tightening things up.
And
but
we are working on something that deals with vacancy factors, which is a big.
Yeah.
That'll be very helpful.
So for me, anything we can do about either seeing it, either correcting it so it's not dipping so hard, or like moving it out, or just giving us some options on how we can get it to stop looking that way and actually make sure our future doesn't look so grim would be great.
One of the things we could do is cut it from 5 years to 3 years, because they are,
No.
well, but go
The
ahead, Bob.
advantage of 3 years is it's much more accurate. If you've been in budgeting for a while and you do 5-year projections, they're all off, no matter
know.
what,
They
and
have to be.
I'm used to doing budgets in the $100 million.
Mhm.
5 years is hard to project. The studies show that a 3-year budget is much more accurate. And you can
Yeah, but
make
if-
better decisions on a 3-year budget than a 5-year budget. Just one other point, Jen. You talk about it plummeting. It plummeted, but it doesn't go, it goes to the level that the Board of Supervisors want it to be at. That's your goal, is 1 million, whatever.
10%.
So it's plummeting, but it's.
So you're
where
saying,
you-
so you're saying
it's
at
where
that
you
end,
want
it's,
it to be.
it's gonna level out at that point? That's what I'm worried about, is at that 5th year, we're watching it go down. At that 5th year, what happens? Is it gonna level out? Or should I just
It
anticipate it?
depends on, it
And that's
depends on how accurate your budgets are in the future
And that's the thing that
and how
makes,
you control spending. I mean, if you always increase expenses and never increase your revenue, then you have a problem.
right. But we're showing increases in revenue because we have the millage plan in there.
Not
No?
as
Yeah,
fast,
sure.
not as fast as
No.
expenses go up.
Mhm.
We
So
don't
you either have to control expenses or you have to raise your taxes a little bit more than you're doing in your.
So you're saying the millage plan wouldn't cover the future?
Oh, it could.
I mean,
Oh, good.
It could, but the point is that our sources of revenue, our natural sources of revenue that are not millage driven, don't
Mhm.
have the growth potential that we can see that the percentage wise that the expense side has.
Right.
And so the expense side always outstrips the other side.
Well, can you do something about that then? 'Cause-
Joe,
They'll work on it.
Well, one thing I think the Ways and Means can do with the help of admin is to, over the next, hopefully the first 6 months of the year, doing a retrospective and see what has been the budget versus actual over time.
that's
And
what I was
how's
just.
that progressed? To what has the millage rate impact on that, which, as Ed said, is nominal because 1 mil is $276,000. You project increases in EIT of 1.5%. You have a 3.25% police contract and 3% that you give to the employees, and you're in a deficit spending mode, and you're going to get a bad answer. But things, as they say on the bumper sticker, S happens. Biggest thing is, and we need to, I think, is to look at capital, because we project capital and we never spend. That's where I think the retrospective thing is. What have we spent historically for the last 5 years in capital? What have we forecasted? And look at the October to December actuals and see how they have changed. My first year, all right, there was a $2 million swing between October and
January.
December. And I alluded to the fact that there must have been a lot of sandbags that weren't bought because there was so much sandbagging done. But as I said, Ed and Ken and admin have done a job to tighten that thing. But there are still items that need a drill down, okay, and a retrospective drill down. What have we been doing and how far off are we?
Well,
Right.
but it isn't just from that. I think it might, that's a very useful study. I've done it before in my own profession, looking back, but it also might give Jen some comfort to say, revenues have to be conservative. Expenditures, you've got a little fat in them and, and
Yeah.
not exactly professional nomenclature, but anyway. And by the time you add all of that and multiply it each year, out 5 years, you've got more variance.
Yep.
And it needs to be conservative, and it's usually
Right. Right. And so you were talking about the police, which was another topic that I was curious about. We have our negotiations coming up in 22, I think, for our new contract. So I'm not sure if Ways and Means would be interested in looking at the police, the spending for police to prepare us for our negotiations.
Well, I think that that's one of the things with the salary and benefits, we could certainly start doing as far as an analysis of what is currently happening, and it'll blend right in with the plan, or I think it can, that Stephanie was referring to, and benchmarking and all of that. So,
That'd be great.
I mean, everybody, you know, Joe, Eric, I don't necessarily know your backgrounds as well as I know, you know, some of the people older, but I shouldn't say older, sorry.
Older.
More experience on the committee.
Long-term committee members?
I told you it's been a long day. Here, let me just stick my foot in my mouth and chew on it a bit.
Jeff Folk and Eric would like to get more involved and help with
Yes.
that aspect. You know,
Yes,
I mean,
that's,
they've been on for a year now, and you know, certainly have observed a lot and in dialogue. I'm sure they bring a fresh perspective.
so I think that that's a really good idea, Jen, and spend a year and analyze what has happened and where we are, and then having a consultant come in, maybe benchmark things. That's a lot to bite off. I think. But one of the other areas that we have started asking questions about, and you know, again, I've been on this committee for a long time, but really don't know a lot about. And Keith, I'm glad you're here. Is DTMA, understanding how you know, the authority works. Well, not so much works, but from a financial point of view, what the long-term plan is. I think I've heard or read that there's a significant, and we've talked about a little bit, a significant plan. And I'm going to step back into my CPA right now. I remember last year I kept bugging, nagging, whatever verb you want to use, Ken, about when we're going to know what the final audit figures are and everything. And I do recall, and maybe incorrectly, that the DTMA audit kind of slowed things down a little bit. So, and since DTMA is a component unit of the township's financials, I would like for the committee to understand a bit more about what's going on, if the committee is interested.
I'm for it. Yeah. It's an area that has a significant budget that we don't dwell on, or even we do nothing in terms of interaction with them. You know, they put together their budget, and they are a part of the, although they're a separate entity, they are, you know, 100% responsibility for that operation is the township. So, you know, they dovetail. And I look at it as if it's like it's like a consolidation in my terms. You know, we have a wholly owned subsidiary that, in fact, has another auditor than what the township has. And in my world, if you had a subsidiary, typically the KPMGs of the world, if that was our auditing firm, they did the subsidiary work.
And in the past, Joe, the same auditor has always done the DTMA and the township. It was just that we always get pricing for both, you know, the entities in the books. And this year happened to be that the price for another firm was high on our side, but low on their side. And so they decided to try somebody new.
Yeah,
and go with that lower price.
I hear you, but sometimes, you know, when you have interdepartmental transactions and you have one auditing firm on one side of the transaction and someone else on the other side of the transaction, sometimes that communication breaks down. Plus, you have no, you know, then you're looking at one firm to make sure that everything's copacetic on both sides of the books. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but we may be penny wise and dollar foolish.
Well, and administration may have thoughts about that too. And, you know, because sometimes it can be more difficult For
Yeah.
example, and another reason the DTMA came up is because of how many people or the percentage or FTEs that work for both DTMA or, excuse me, work for the township, but part of their salary and benefits are allocated to DTMA, and, you know, understanding if it's a complete allocation of the total costs related to those employees. So,
Yeah, I'll jump in here real quick, and yeah, they're all good points, and we have, I think we have 1 year
Oh.
left on our uh, audit with our with the new auditor, so we can certainly, you know, Ken and myself will discuss the pros and the cons of having a separate auditor. But yeah, for 2021, you know, we're transparent. Anything we can do to help to further understand the relationship is that's no problem. We you know, we have our liaison, we have our board of directors that you know, do an intense review of the budget as well. So we're trust me, we're scrutinized as much as anybody in the township is as well. So you know, we're here to help and here to understand, and you know, anything that I can personally do, if anybody's got any questions, please give me a call and let me know. You know, I understand we're a component unit, and like Brenda, like you said, you don't want to dive into the operations, which is great. And you know, anything we can do to help is, you know, I'm all for it.
well, I'm also, and thank you, Keith. I appreciate you being here, and we may, you may be a guest speaker or may be
Sure,
coming or
Yep.
joining us more than what you want to.
sure.
But I, you know, during one of the recent conversations, the infrastructure conversation, and then when I looked at the financial statements, which, you know, I like to do, I did have some questions, and the
Sure.
conversation sometimes helps a lot more than the footnotes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
The only question I was thinking when we talk about DTMA, well, two questions. I guess first would be whether if we undergo, I guess, compensation study or work with consultant on staff, will staff that works between the two entities be included in that? Or will the whole other entity be included in that? I would recommend both. If not both, then at least staff that we share, I would assume. And the other is just whether or not having the component unit has had affected underwriting on our issues or our ratings, or if that's ever even been a question on financials.
No.
I'm just curious because I wasn't involved with the committee at that point.
No,
Okay.
I don't know that, you know, it was a large enough dollar amount at the last time when they had a full-blown rating call.
Yeah.
But, you know, I remember sitting there as well, and there really was no questions about finances of DTMA. But isn't there a large infrastructure plan starting to be in place? So, you know, that may change.
It may impact. I think that's where I was going with it. If there is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think our capital investment plan is
Yeah.
No different than any authority or as far as the amount of revenue versus what we're projecting to spend. You know, we're a relatively young system, which helps. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't foresee that being a big concern, Colleen, moving
Yeah.
forward.
Okay, good.
And this might be another area to have a subcommittee. I don't know what the rest of you think. Maybe all of us don't need to become DTMA experts or financial experts or whatever. So it's just something that we can be thinking about. But I'm also looking at Joe and Eric. So, you know, that we can do something to get both of you more involved as we move forward. And Michael, I'm not looking at you because you're just a name, but you as well. And one thing before we go back, are we kind of good with where we are with salaries and benefits? And thank you, Stephanie and Jen, for mentioning the review, and Nancy. And then, you know, DTMA and how it interrelates with salary benefits and looking at that capital. That's gonna be a lot. It's aggressive and maybe we should cut that down, but thoughts on that before we jump back to ask, which I think will be fairly brief reports on as far as what is up with capital.
Brenda, you did bring up the cost analysis for like a program in the Park and Rec. I'd love to know that when we're looking at the Park and Rec Community Center, you know, what is the cost, like that cost analysis? When if we have, you know, maybe there's too many programs, not enough programs, like where's that break even point for us? Like that's always for me a cost analysis. Maybe, you know, I'm all about bathrooms, so you're always gonna get my support there, one. And two, the whole gym thing.
I don't want to be known as the bathroom lady.
I'm already known as the bathroom lady. And then also like the whole, when they go to look at, I know they're going to be doing the feasibility study with the community center, but like how many gyms is enough gyms? And, you know, so when we go to look at, should we have 1 gym, 2 gym, 3 gyms? I'm just making, you know, throwing out lots of numbers, and what the need is, and then looking at that versus programs and what that cost analysis looks like, just from, not even just from our staff, but also what income brings in, and then what is our philosophy, right? Because it can't always be completely about money. It's also about the programs and services like Colleen brought up. So finding what is that right balance.
Nancy, Joe has his hand up because he's done some, he's right below me right now. He's done so much work on this already.
Well, Bob's selling too.
Yeah.
And Bob, he's
Nancy,
diagonal.
Nancy, I was on the subcommittee with Brenda and Bob, and with my financial background, I basically put together the financial analysis with the help of Karen. But I've got the Excel spreadsheet, and yes, it does not work if you do not have a gym, unless you want to spend a mill each year to subsidize. The only way it made sense was to have a gym and a 13,000 plus square foot facility. If you want to email me your email, I will send you the last, and this, by the way, was reviewed with the Parks and Rec group, which bought into the analysis and also was presented
To the board of
to the
supervisors.
board.
I did that,
So
yeah.
How long ago, can I ask you?
Yeah, it would
Last
still,
year?
it would still be on video, wouldn't it?
19 It was 19.
Yeah, it's about a year ago.
Okay,
Probably
because I
19,
know,
yeah.
right,
And just so everybody knows, and I don't want to, sorry, Nancy, I
I think
apologize.
it was like 2
That's
months
all
before
been
you came on.
shared with the consultant, Ken Ballard from Ballard King. It has all been, all of that information that you guys put together has been shared with him. And I'm going to jump ahead because if I don't, I may forget, because I know you want the community rec center architect. Dave will talk about the timeline and all that, but we have talked to them. We've shared, they asked for tons of information. We shared all the stuff that you did. But one of the things they'll be doing is they'll be having what is called, and Dave, correct me wrong, stakeholder meetings, where they will have questions prepared. Each Board of Supervisors member will have an individual call with the consultant. In addition, the Ways and Means, Telecommunications Advisory Board, the EAC, and the Park and Recreation Board will have a series of questions provided ahead of time. And Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm doing this off the top of my head.
No, you're doing fine. Keep going.
Keep going. Okay, good. But you will need to kind of look at those, and then you will need to kind of pick a spokesperson, if you will, to have that one-on-one call with the consultant. So you can kind of look through the questions as a group, figure out your answers, and then you're pointing to Ed on my screen, Ed Ebenbach. No, but you guys can, you know, talk amongst yourselves. You'll be able to pick a person, and you'll have an individual call with the consultant, and you'll be able to share what your group has directed you to share.
I think I want to add to that stuff, and I
Yeah,
think
go ahead.
you're absolutely right at what you said. But first off, I think what we want to add is that that we have asked the consultant to produce a monthly update summary of of work progressed to date, which will be distributed to the Board of Supervisors and the interested committees, boards and commissions, Park and Rec, Ways and Means, so that everybody sees what's transpired month to month.
Great.
And it's the same message across the board for everybody from the board to this committee to Park and Rec,
Great.
and whoever else is interested. So that's coming shortly. It should be in the board packet for this next meeting on December 15th here. So that is what we're trying to do and work with the architect to do that. So please understand that that information will be coming out, and then if there are questions that can come back through staff to go to the architect if there's anything that has to be clarified or questions and things like that. So that's what we're planning on doing. Just to give everybody an update on that.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Stephanie, I know the park program, the recommendations moving forward. Has that been shared yet? I know you shared it with the supervisors, so people can read that in terms of like,
That'll, Nancy, I believe, that will be a formal presentation. The Board of Supervisors has it. DCNR, I think, has just completed their review on it. Final corrections that DCNR wanted to see are being done, and then that will go to the board. A formal presentation will be made to the board. You'll adopt that document, and then it'll be on the website. We'll share it with whatever committee wants to look at it, and it'll be the copy that everybody utilizes going forward. And a copy was shared also with the consultant for the Park Rec Community Center building as well.
I was just thinking more from the Ways and Means, and may look at it and go, oh, they're saying fields, or they're saying, XYZ about bike and hike, that they may bring a different spin to it, looking at it from another lens. So I think it's helpful. The more information you have, it may, like I said, I'm not a finance girl, but I know I'm looking for cost analysis to know, hey, you know what, like you guys have put a ton of money into bike and hike paths, or what we need to like really like work on our fields and the drainage, and really like this is what we need to offer. But I would love to, again, cost analysis. So that's why I was wondering when will that be presented, so that
I'm thinking you guys are I think it's going to be probably your February meeting. We were on the phone with the consultant today as to when she would be able to, probably it'll be your February meeting, and then it'll go out to everybody.
Then when will they be interviewing all these committees? Like, because I think they should have that
you're combining two different things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One, I was getting confused.
Yeah, you're the Park Recreation Open Space Comprehensive Plan, if you will. That document is going to be presented. You've already looked, the board's already seen the draft of it, and you'll be adopting that. Once it's adopted, then we'll be able to put it on the website, share it with the Ways and Means Committee, etc. But the Park and Rec Community Center building, the consultants for that probably sometime in mid to late January will be beginning to reach out to the individual Board of Supervisors. They'll be reaching out to the Ways and Means Committee. But again, the committee will have the questions. They'll come up with a spokesperson, and then that spokesperson will have a lengthy phone call with the consultant one-on-one. And
I'm sorry, maybe I'm calling, but the comprehensive plan that was just done by Park and Rec of what we should be doing moving forward.
It was actually that was actually a committee that the Park Recreation Open Space Comprehensive Plan. There was only one representative from the Park Board. Jen was on there as the supervisor. Bob Salonek was on there from Ways and Means, and Woodbury was on there from the EAC, Bike and Hike. It was a community, it was a kind of a committee, a representative group with a short-term assignment, if you will.
Right, but maybe I'm beating a dead horse like bathrooms, but like understanding the demographics the
Mhm.
percentage of people using things, those
Mhm.
kinds of things, I think help mold what the decisions are and the services. If I go back to what Colleen said, I guess that's why I'm trying to say, I think having that information, looking at it, we may be focusing on the wrong thing and saying, this is really the types of services we should be providing and where we should be putting our money. I guess that's maybe what I'm trying to understand better. Maybe I'm not articulating.
Nancy, just for clarification, we did the open space, the park and open space comprehensive plan exactly for that, to understand demographics and everything. And we've had it before, it was an update. So the purpose of it was to be able to present it to the decision makers and the advisors so that we could make plans based on what our best options were, according to that document. So I'm not sure I understand what you're looking to do.
So I'll give an
further.
example. I was taken back. My youngest just graduated high school, and I was taken back when I saw we have a real deficit in offering programs for teenagers. That there's a huge need for gyms and fields and a huge opportunity, even when you talk about revenue. I just think that those are things that we could potentially be looking at. And I think it's important that everyone gets to see that, because it may change your lens. I don't want to, it's fine to identify it, but I'm looking for actionable items or opportunities that you can say, hey, this is a way you can bring revenue in, right? Like, I'll use the example of, I'm gonna probably make everybody's head blow. Should the community center be by the township building so that we could have that potential revenue, multiple gyms happening, multiple family opportunities, and the clamshell, the bathrooms are taken care of, and there's parking, and does it cover everything at once? I'm going to use just that generic, does it cover all those things? Because once we moved the community center to New Britain Road, as I mentioned to you, Jen and Stephanie, we still have these other issues, which is why I think Ways and Means brought up the bathroom issue, because that was part of the plan. Once it was resolved where it was going to be, there was supposed to be a bathroom resolution. So my bigger thing is that wider lens. That's
So
what
you're,
I'm looking for.
Well,
so you're asking each of the boards to review the comprehensive plan, and okay, yeah, I think that's what they'll be doing.
Yeah, I think this makes sense, because they may go, hey, you could make revenue, or there could be, or by having it here, there's this cost benefit analysis that you guys
Yeah,
are gonna
that's the
figure out.
exact purpose of the report,
Yeah.
is for them to do that.
Once it's the final document with the board, it will be shared. And I remember Brenda's predecessor, Mark, some of you may remember Mark being on the board. That book in 2007, when it was adopted, I think it was adopted in early 2008 or so. And I remember he looked at it, and after the committee was formed, and he was very impressed with the document. And, they looked at it and they used it as well. And looking at the Ways and Means Committee, make sure that how are we going to fund X, Y, and Z from the thing. So it's all going to be shared. But I think, at this point, we have to go through that process. I think everything's going to kind of come together in January and February. The document will be adopted. Everybody will be able to have it. Everybody will be able to talk to Ken Ballard. And then of course, there's public meetings as part of the process as well. And of course, we're, the one-on-ones are easy because they're phone calls, whatever, but then there will be group ones that'll all be done via Zoom, and the public meetings probably also be done via Zoom and everything like that. So, and the neighbors meeting, so there's a lot of meetings coming forth on the quote feasibility side of a facility.
okay.
And a lot of input from, hopefully, anybody and the brother, so to speak, really getting involved.
Well, and a year ago, it's been over a year ago, that there was some stakeholders meetings that took place that she spent money on with shoot, her name just went out of my mind. I can see her face.
Judy
Goldstein.
Judy.
Yeah, thank you. So it's and part of it is reanalyzing and revisiting things, but let's try to wrap up our agenda for tonight, if we could. So we still are thinking about, now we have some other things to consider. But in-depth subcommittees work for next year, again, salary and benefits, maybe a DTMA, and maybe more park and rec. Oh, Joe, you're raising your hand again. I'm trying to wrap things up, but go ahead.
No, I'm volunteering.
Oh, you're volunteering. Oh, woo. Jeff or Bob.
I'm not volunteering,
You're
but
hiding.
I do want to make one comment that, when long range committee met, they met with all of the users of our facilities. And I would hope that they would be included in Ballard's interview, because
They're
that's
another.
where there was very strong commitment for gyms. I
Yep.
mean, they were begging for gym space.
I
They're
would
one-
venture that
They would be a group like this, obviously,
Okay.
Bob, but they're a focus group.
And,
We've learned
that's where a lot of the revenue.
Stakeholders, focus groups, public meetings. So that's considered a focus group.
Is there any plan that can be shared with this committee or the public, I guess would really be what I'm asking, so that, we can see who will be, because I would not have thought about that. And Bob, it's an excellent point, DA and all those groups, but Stephanie, you've already addressed it, or the board's addressed it. If you could just maybe point us to something on the website or send us something.
Not yet. We have
Okay.
a page that'll be part of it. Karen's created on the Park Rec page. There's a spot that will be dedicated to I'll call it the community center, for just shortening it up. And it'll have information and progress on those things.
Which Dave kind of alluded to.
Yeah.
earlier.
Mhm.
Okay, so moving on to Dave, I guess. I put sewer project, and I realized when I did that, I should stop referencing everything over. And Colleen and Bob haven't called me on it, but anyway, what's going on with,
I wouldn't refer to it as sewer project anymore. Maybe the Pebble Ridge, Woodridge.
and I should have.
Yeah. Public.
I'll let Bob
Public
speak, because I couldn't
improvements
make our
would be
meeting
best.
this morning, so.
I apologize. Anyway, Mr. Tomko.
I was going to defer to Steph and let her answer that question, but
Sewers are being installed.
we're just progressing.
Progressing. Water's
Yeah.
being installed, curbs.
Yeah.
Dave can talk all about curbs and paving, base paving.
I have a hydrant in front of my
Hydrant.
house. Yay, thank you, Keith.
Ooh,
I'm gonna call my insurance company tomorrow.
yeah,
Yep,
there you go. That'd be a smart thing to do.
yeah, they came up and said, here's where we're putting your water line. Sorry about the roads. And you're getting a hydrant. So we were like, all right, now we have to get a dog.
Now you just need to connect.
Yeah, now we need to connect. Yep.
So are there any other major, have there been any timeline changes or anything, Dave, that we need to worry about?
Well, the sewers are, we don't have control over the sewer the sewer project installation. That they've always messaged, and we felt, and I'm going to be honest and say, and we as a staff agree, and we know they're behind, and they're projecting that they're, I don't know how far behind they're behind, and which has held things up. I'm going to be honest, held up the curbing project, held up the paving. It really pushed us out another 30 days, held up the water installation. So, but we're moving forward with the curb and the paving. The paving should be wrapped up this week. The curbing installation is done except for the ramps over at Turk and Pebble Ridge Road. That's getting done. So paving will be done and wrapped up well before Christmas, and the curbing should be wrapped up before the end of the year. So
For that part of the project.
Yes.
yeah, for this for the project for 2020. Yeah, and then we got to look at obviously what does 2020 bring, and putting getting that project ready for 2021,
Right.
and where we're going to go and things like that. But again, it's still, we're going to be always following the sewers. So even if there's roads, we may have to break it up more. I don't know. Maybe we have to do smaller contracts, but that drives the price up, because again, the more work somebody can do, the better the price.
Sure.
So, but if we see that, it's, I don't know when they're gonna be on the old new road, but right now they're on Buck, they're gonna jump to old new at some point, somewhere around there. I haven't memorized their schedule, but, that's gonna hold us up. That's why we're paving in December. Okay, so, that it is what it is, and we're done for this year coming up. So I spoke with somebody this evening about everything being done. We've got speeders now, so hold on to your hat, talk to your neighbors, Colleen and Bob, and let them know. We've always tried to say is, and I know this is off topic, but again, just that it's your neighborhood, it's your neighbors. Slow down. But everybody's happy. I think everybody's appreciating the fact that the noise will be stopped and that we got done. And we're going to see about $1.4 million in expenditures wrapping up the end of the year here. So if you think if we haven't spent in capital, we're gonna spend a lot of money here coming up in November, December. Okay.
Yeah, as needed. Yep.
Okay.
Dave, will you be able to put a base coat down on roads like Westaway when they're done?
Westaway is getting base paved. Westaway is getting base paved. Was getting paved today. Yeah. So we have everything done from Pebble Ridge, Pebble Crest, Hidden Lane, Stony Lane Circle, Westaway, Willow, and Woodridge.
Okay.
Are all base paved with the curbs. No, I'm sorry. Part of Willow and only a portion of Willow is Willow and Willow and Westaway do not have curbs. Everything else does. So yeah, we're caught up.
Plowing's going to be a nightmare this winter.
Yeah, the road's a mess.
It's going to be a mess.
Yeah, yep. But the roads that are base paved are going to be, we'll be good.
So it's time to start writing specifications for the other projects for next summer.
Yeah, look, they're right. They're already done. It's just a matter of really the limit, the project limits, and again, how much is, okay, we can do Buck Road. I can do Buck Road, as soon as they're off of it, but they're going to jump to. I'm assuming, Steph, they're going to go from what, Buck to Old New.
They're going Buck, Anvil. Springdale, old new up to Bristol, but they got to come through the easement, and then the way, and then the David's Way.
So look, it's not an easy thing. It's just go and say, let's just do the curbs on Willow and Westaway, Anvil, and the other cul-de-sac and be done. I mean, we can if we want to. That's something we have to decide, and then maybe we do another contract and we wait for Old New. Yeah, we're just waiting. It was a waiting game with Bucks County Water and Sewer. It held up Keith and it held up us. So, but again, we worked together, we got it done, and that's the positive thing going to the end of the year here. And we spent what we projected to get it done. So,
any other questions from the group regarding capital tonight? Okay. I have one question that I didn't put on the agenda. Any update about Toll Brothers development? Just looking at assessment growth.
Fingers crossed. It should be on the board's agenda for the 15th, but I'm not counting my chicken before the eggs hatch. So
no, but that tells me it's moving along. So
it's moving along. It's moving along.
Did Bucks County Water and Sewer get their piece approved? Weren't they waiting on DEP?
Oh yeah, that's
they got it approved.
They're still kind of waiting, but they've made a lot of progress.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. What do we?
Their DEP is holding toll feet.
Yeah,
holding
okay.
toll up by putting constraints on Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, and they are basically ticking everything off the list for DEP. Everything's in progress. The big thing, but then DEP throws another roadblock and says, oh, well, how about this? How about that? And you didn't capitalize B in Bucks was the last thing on the plan that they threw out. I mean, really? But
Okay, Joe.
It's moving along and, believe me, I've been holding everybody's hands and doing a lot of praying.
Joe?
Are any of the permit fees in the 2021 budget?
Mm,
Some small amount.
we have a
For-
small
for
amount.
the toll development.
They have to
you
do all the site work and everything like that.
And we talked about that a little bit, Joe, too. If Toll Brothers have been put in there, there's a small amount for assessment growth assumed in the budget. And so
Whereas I'm
that,
assuming more like 20, if anything, it would come fourth quarter. Because they have a lot of site work to do.
Well, the issue is whether it's in the budget, and to Jennifer's point, things change. That's one of the things that can change.
and that's why I asked about it too.
Yeah.
Because, Ed, and we talked to last month, I just wondered, because these things can go south just as quickly as continuing
I understand.
forward.
That's why I asked the question.
Thank you.
Like-
What?
I'm just praying, that's all.
I thought you were.
They're my
Um,
knight in shining armor right now, and I keep reminding them of that. Like, you gotta come through, I got 250 people counting on you.
Well, it's interesting, the BET piece and what they're considering doing in Doylestown Borough, but I don't want to go down, talking about the borough versus the township. So there could be a lot of housing changes around us. But anyway, anything else for the good of the order or not on the agenda that I failed to cover? Because we're running later than I planned, but looks not. Is there a motion? Well, I could, first of all, wish everyone holidays continue to be safe. It will be a different type of new year, but Happy New Year to everyone. I hope you celebrate safely and have a good one. Is there a motion to adjourn 2020?
I have a plug for our Park and Recreation Department. I don't know if it's too late, but if you have little ones and you are looking they are doing a thing called New Year's in a Bag. And it's kind of fun, kind of family thing. So if you're looking for something to do with your young children, I'm plugging the Parks and Rec Department.
Thank you.
New Year's in a Bag.
Yeah, I actually saw it. I thought it was kind of cute.
Yeah.
I thought I have young children, but I have
Yeah.
grandchildren. but,
If the grandkids are coming over,
yeah.
whatever. But
Yeah. Bob's going, no, and I'm with Bob, not on New Year's Eve. They could go to the other grandparents. Anyway, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
We're gonna call it an end at 8:38 or 39.
happy holidays.
Happy
Thank
holidays.
you. Happy holidays.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.